The violation notice arrived on a Monday morning. $500. Excessive noise during a community event, signed by the HOA president. What the notice did not mention, that same president had been inside my apartment the night before, uninvited, eating my chips and screaming at my television when Argentina scored. He fined me for a party he crashed, and I had him on camera the entire time. 3 things I want you to see before this is over. First, the timestamp on the violation notice versus the timestamp on my security footage. The same night, 30 minutes apart. Second, the board meeting, me standing at the microphone, the screen behind me. Third, what he says when the footage plays, out loud, in front of everyone. I have lived in the same building for 6 years. I work in logistics, quiet weekends, not the type to throw parties. But the World Cup final was different. 4 friends, food, the TV connected to a speaker. Nothing unusual for that Sunday night. When Rodrigo showed up at halftime, I let him in. He lived 3 doors down. He stayed 90 minutes, cheered louder than anyone during the penalty kicks, and left before the final whistle. I did not think about it again until the notice appeared under my door the next morning. Rodrigo Castillo had been HOA president for 4 years. He was the kind of man who called building inspections on neighbors who painted their front doors without submitting a color request form. His line, the one he used at every board meeting, was, "Rules exist for everyone equally." Rules exist for everyone equally. He said it like a principle. What it actually meant, I was about to learn, was, rules exist for everyone I have decided to apply them to. Here is what Rodrigo did not know I knew. HOA fines are not automatic. In most states, a violation notice must follow a process. Written warning first, a cure period, then a fine only if the violation continues. A same-night fine with no prior warning is procedurally invalid in most jurisdictions. But there is a second layer that matters more here: selective enforcement. Courts have consistently held that HOAs cannot enforce rules selectively, applying them to some residents while ignoring identical behavior by others, or in this case by the person issuing the fine himself. Selective enforcement is a defense to an HOA fine. It can also form the basis of a counterclaim, and when the person who issued the fine was physically present at the alleged violation, actively participating in it, that is not selective enforcement in the gray zone, that is open and shut. My building had a hallway camera. I had a Ring camera on my patio. I had not thought about either until I read the notice and something clicked. She said, "Pull the footage before you do anything else." That was my sister when I called her. She is a paralegal. Before I go further, have you ever received an HOA fine that felt personal rather than procedural? One that came out of nowhere with no warning from someone who had a reason to single you out? Comment below, because what I found out later is that this was not his first time. The hallway footage showed Rodrigo entering my unit at 9:47 p.m. The Ring footage showed him leaving at 11:22 p.m. The violation notice was timestamped 11:58 p.m., 36 minutes after he walked out of my apartment. He filed the complaint on his phone on the walk home. I called the HOA management company the next morning and asked to speak to someone about the notice. She said the president has authority to issue same-night violations for noise disturbances that exceed a reasonable threshold. I said, "Is there a process for contesting a fine?" She said you can submit a written appeal within 14 days. I submitted the appeal that afternoon. I did not mention the footage yet. I cited only the procedural issue, no prior written warning, no cure period. I wanted to see what they said before I showed what I had. The appeal came back denied, 3-1. Rodrigo had voted with the majority on a complaint he had filed for an event he had attended. She said he voted on his own appeal. I said 3-1, he was one of the 3. She said that is a conflict of interest violation. Board members are required to recuse themselves from votes in which they have a direct personal stake. It is in almost every set of HOA bylaws in existence. She asked me to send her the footage. She watched it and called me back in 20 minutes. She said, "We are going to the next board meeting." Where we are, invalid fine, denied appeal, conflict of interest vote, footage in hand. What I did not know yet, 2 other residents in the building had open appeals with the board, both filed in the last 6 months, both involving Rodrigo. My sister filed a formal records request for all violation notices issued in the building over the past 2 years. We were looking for a pattern. 11 fines in 18 months, 7 issued to 3 specific units, all residents who had publicly disagreed with Rodrigo at board meetings. 1 questioned the landscaping budget. 1 asked for the reserve fund audit. I had asked why the guest parking policy changed without a resident vote. She said, "This is a paper trail of retaliation." Each of these fines has a corresponding board meeting date where that resident spoke up. I said, "Can we use this?" She said, "At the meeting, yes. In court, absolutely." 3 days before the meeting, Rodrigo sent a message to the building group chat reminding everyone that meeting conduct was governed by rules of order and that personal attacks on board members were prohibited. Personal attacks. He was preemptively framing what I was about to show as a personal attack. She said, "Do not respond to that message. Do not engage. Set up dynamic. You will dismantle it with facts in the room." 14 residents at the meeting, more than usual. When the floor opened, I walked to the microphone with a laptop. I stated my name, my unit, the fine amount, and asked to share documentation. The board secretary said yes. I played 40 seconds of the hallway footage, then 40 seconds of the ring footage. Then I put the violation notice on screen next to the timestamps. The room was quiet. Rodrigo said the footage was out of context, that he had stopped by as a neighbor, not as president. I said the bylaws require board members to recuse from votes in which they have a personal stake. Can you explain how you do not have a personal stake in a fine you issued and then voted to uphold? He did not answer. The board secretary called a recess. They came back 11 minutes later and announced the fine would be refunded. I want to ask you something. Before that meeting, I almost just paid the fine, $500. It would have been easier. I had already spent more than that in time and stress. What made me not pay it was the timestamp, that 36-minute gap between him leaving and filing the notice. Something about that felt wrong enough to pull the footage. Is there something in your HOA situation right now that feels wrong but you have not pulled the thread on yet? Tell me in the comments. The fine was refunded in full the following week. Rodrigo resigned from the board 30 days after the meeting. No statement. The management company sent a notice announcing an interim president. Of the 11 documented fines, 8 were reviewed by the interim board and 5 were reversed, including both open appeals from my neighbors. My sister said something on the phone the night the refund posted. She said, "You know what won this? Not the footage, the timestamp." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "He filed that notice 30 gap is the whole case. It tells you everything about the state of mind he was in when he wrote it. He fined me $500 for a party he crashed. And the reason I won is not complicated. I had the footage, I knew the procedural rules, and I did not pay first and ask questions later." If your HOA issues a fine without a prior written warning, that is your first question to ask. If a board member votes on a matter in which they are personally involved, that is your second. Both are documented in almost every set of governing documents in existence. Pull your bylaws, read the enforcement section, and if something feels wrong, check the timestamps. Subscribe for real cases every week, and if this has happened to you, you know where the comments are.